There is a painful truth that many people never confront. And because they never confront it, they spend years trying to change their financial life while protecting the inner identity that keeps recreating the same financial reality. They want more money, but they still see themselves as small. They want peace, but they still think like a person who expects pressure. They want expansion, but they still behave like someone who does not trust themselves with increase. And that is why this episode matters. Because your money life cannot rise above your self-image for long. It may move for a season. It may improve for a moment. It may even experience a temporary breakthrough. But if your internal image remains weak, conflicted, fearful, or poor, then over time, your behavior will quietly pull your financial life back down to match what you secretly believe about yourself. That is not punishment. That is alignment. And if you understand that deeply, then you stop treating money as an outside problem only. You begin to see it as an inner mirror. You begin to understand that financial results are not just produced by the market, or by hard work, or by luck, or by timing. They are also produced by identity, by self-respect, by inner standards, by the level of life you believe is normal for someone like you. So today, I want to speak to the part of you that wants more, but also to the part of you that still resists more, because both parts are real. One part desires increase, another part fears it, doubts it, delays it, or feels unworthy of it. And until those parts are brought into order, financial progress will remain unstable. This is not a shallow motivation talk. This is identity correction. Let us begin with a spiritual principle. Your self-image is a governing force. It shapes what you allow, what you reject, what you repeat, what you reach for, and what you unconsciously sabotage. It becomes the emotional ceiling of your behavior. It defines what feels natural, what feels too much, what feels safe, and what feels unrealistic. In other words, your self-image becomes a quiet inner law that your financial life keeps obeying. That is why two people can hear the same financial truth and respond in completely different ways. One hears it and begins to build. The other hears it and collapses into doubt. One sees opportunity, the other sees danger. One feels responsible, the other feels overwhelmed. The difference is not only knowledge, the difference is identity. A weak self-image makes discipline feel heavy. A fractured self-image makes consistency unstable. A poor self-image makes wealth feel distant, suspicious, or not for people like me. So when I say that your money life cannot rise above your self-image, I am saying something precise. I am saying that money tends to flow through the channels your identity allows. If your inner world is not strong enough to support discipline, clarity, boundaries, stewardship, and long-term thinking, then your financial life will eventually reveal that weakness. Now let us bridge this into money and mindset directly, because this channel does not stop at beautiful ideas. It must touch real life. Money behavior is never just about math. It is also about self-concept. The person who sees themselves as careless will be careless with money. The person who sees themselves as powerless will move passively around money. The person who sees themselves as unworthy will often sabotage increase the moment it appears. The person who sees themselves as unstable will find it difficult to build stable financial habits. And the person who quietly believes that wealth belongs to other people will unconsciously keep a distance from the very structure that could change their life. This is why some people earn more and still remain chaotic. This is why some people learn better money principles and still fail to apply them. This is why some people talk about prosperity, yet continue living in patterns that betray prosperity, because the behavior has not yet been lifted by a higher identity. Here is the money bridge in its clearest form. Your financial life tends to settle at the level of self-respect your identity can sustain. If your self-respect is low, your standards will be low. If your standards are low, your decisions will be weak. If your decisions are weak, your money life will become a field of leaks. And leaks are expensive. Not only the obvious leaks, like overspending or disorganization, but the deeper leaks. Hesitation, where courage is needed. Delay, where action is needed. Avoidance, where truth is needed. Impulse, where discipline is needed. Excuses, where maturity is needed. That is why financial transformation must involve identity transformation. Otherwise, you will keep trying to build a prosperous life with an inner architecture that cannot hold prosperity without distortion. Let me give you a story. Imagine a man who grows up hearing, directly or indirectly, that money is for other people. He may never hear those exact words, but he feels the message everywhere. He sees struggle treated as normal. He sees survival treated as wisdom. He sees disorder repeated so often that it begins to feel familiar. Then he grows older and begins to desire more. He wants peace. He wants stability. He wants dignity. He wants to live differently. So he starts learning. He reads. He listens. He gets inspired. He begins to understand things his younger self never understood. But when it comes time to act, something inside him resists. He delays tracking. He avoids looking at the numbers. He hesitates to ask for more. He shrinks around opportunities. He talks himself out of discipline. He says he wants prosperity, but internally, he still feels like someone standing outside the room looking in. Now notice the tragedy. The issue is not intelligence. The issue is not information. The issue is that his inner picture of himself has not yet caught up with the future he says he wants to inhabit. So even when progress starts, he feels uncomfortable. He feels like an outsider in a larger financial reality. He might even create small breakdowns just to return to what feels emotionally familiar, because familiarity often feels safer than elevation. That is how self-image quietly governs outcomes. Now imagine another person. This person may not have perfect circumstances either, but at some point, they make an internal shift. They say, I refuse to keep seeing myself through the lens of lack. They begin small. They start speaking differently. They start managing differently. They stop treating themselves like someone who cannot be trusted. They stop normalizing disorder. They begin to associate self-respect with structure. They build evidence. They repeat behaviors that confirm a stronger identity. Months later, they are not just managing money differently, they are standing differently, thinking differently, deciding differently. Their self-image has been elevated, and their financial life begins to follow. That is the pattern. Your money life does not need a fantasy version of you. It needs a rebuilt version of you. So what does that rebuilding look like? It begins with honesty. Many people want financial change, but they are still emotionally loyal to a smaller version of themselves, a version that expects less, a version that tolerates confusion, a version that hesitates around increase, a version that still feels more familiar with pressure than with peace. That smaller self-image can show up in subtle ways. Underpricing your time. Overspending to feel briefly powerful. Staying disorganized because structure feels unnatural. Failing to protect money because you do not yet see yourself as a steward. Delaying responsibility because deep down, you still do not identify as a builder. And if those patterns are left untouched, your financial life will keep circling the same ceiling. So now we move into the practice. I want to give you a protocol that is practical enough to use, but deep enough to expose the real issue. I call it the Financial Self-Image Audit. Step 1. Write down the current financial identity you have been living from. Not the identity you admire, the identity your behavior has been proving. Maybe it is. I have been living like someone who reacts instead of plans. Or, I have been living like someone who does not trust themselves with money. Or, I have been living like someone who wants peace, but still entertains disorder. The point here is not shame. The point is clarity. Step 2. Write down the financial identity you must now install. Again, not in fantasy, but in responsibility. Examples. I am a steward. I am financially disciplined. I am someone who treats money with structure and respect. I am someone who can hold peace, order, and increase. Step 3. Identify one daily behavior that proves this new identity. Only one. Not 10 things. One thing. That behavior might be tracking spending every evening, reviewing your bank activity for 10 minutes daily, obeying a 24-hour rule before any unnecessary purchase, moving money into savings the moment income enters, maintaining one clean financial system or folder, learning one wealth-related skill with disciplined consistency. Step 4. Ask the most important question in this entire process. What would a person with my new self-image no longer tolerate? Maybe they would no longer tolerate random spending. Maybe they would no longer tolerate not knowing their numbers. Maybe they would no longer tolerate speaking like a victim around money. Maybe they would no longer tolerate delay disguised as confusion. That question matters because self-image is not only built by what you start, it is also built by what you stop excusing. Step 5. Reinforce the new identity daily with evidence. At the end of each day, write one sentence. Today I acted like someone who can hold more. That sentence is not empty affirmation. It is evidence-based reinforcement. It is your mind learning that the new identity is no longer theoretical. Now let me tell you what not to do. Do not try to force a grand financial identity overnight. Do not pretend to be wealthy in your imagination while behaving carelessly in your structure. Do not use high vibration language to avoid uncomfortable truth. Do not talk like a steward and then move like a child. Do not say you want legacy while still living in unexamined leaks. Real elevation is quieter than that. It looks like self-respect. It looks like order. It looks like repeated sobriety. It looks like being able to trust your own standards. And that is why this channel sits where it sits, not as a tactical finance channel, and not as a vague spiritual one. We are here to rebuild the person who can handle prosperity cleanly. Because prosperity without inner order becomes distortion. But prosperity built on restored identity becomes stability. Now here is your action step for today. Before this day ends, do one thing that proves your money life is no longer being governed by the old self-image. Choose one. Review every transaction from the last 7 days. Cancel one recurring expense that reflects careless identity. Create one clean folder or system for your financial life. move one amount of money into a buffer account, even if small. Write down one financial behavior you will no longer tolerate from yourself. Then say this, calmly, without performance. My financial life will no longer be governed by an old self-image. Do that today. Because if you keep waiting for your external life to change before your self-image changes, you will stay trapped. But if you elevate your self-image first and then align your behavior with it, your money life begins to move in a new direction. Now let us close. I do not need to perform prosperity. I need to become compatible with it. I reject the inner image that keeps me small, disordered, hesitant, or financially weak. I restore self-respect. I restore stewardship. I restore standards. I build from identity, not illusion. My money life will rise as my self-image rises. Restore self, build wealth, leave legacy.